My name is Rich Mullaney. I'm a volunteer at the Game Fish and Parks outdoor campus in Rapid City. And I used to work for a federal agency called USDA, Natural Resource Conservation Service, for over 30 years as a natural resource specialist. Recently, the public broadcasting station aired a program on grasslands. And the promo for that stated, "Once overlooked, we now know that grasslands have a hidden power. Not only can they host the greatest gathering of life on Earth, but they could even heal our planet. Key species from the wildebeest of the Serengeti to the bison of North American prairies can revive forgotten habitat. Healthy grasslands could be more resilient carbon sinks than forests, and even slow climate change." The Great Plains are the grasslands of North America, and they are basically from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains region from Texas up beyond Canada. And the early Europeans, when they started coming across the Great Plains, they labeled it as the Great American Desert because of the hostile environment that was out here that they found. The Great Plains is actually a very diverse ecosystem. The vegetation was mostly grasses and forbs. The amount of vegetation production was dependent upon the soil and the climate, and there's a healthy equilibrium between all parts of the ecosystem. The main grazers were bison. For thousands of years, Native Americans used the bison for survival and well-being, using every part of the bison for food, clothing, shelter, tools, jewelry, and even in ceremonies. It is estimated that around the 1500s, there's between 30 and 60 million bison in North America. The available vegetation, numerous animals, and life on the grasslands all evolved together and dependent on each other for their stability. Starting in the 1800s, the Europeans started moving across the Great Plains area. Around 1830, a mass destruction of bison started. By 1884, there was only 325 left in the United States. Today, it is estimated that there's a population of around 500,000. This is definitely a drastic change for the ecosystem and for the grasslands at that time. And then along with that, in the early 1900s, deep-rooted prairie grasses were also being plowed under. As this expansion moved west, the climate became was drier, and farming, especially dryland farming, was more challenging. Annual crops were being planted, like wheat, oats, and corn. Other events that greatly affected the grassland was that in 1929, the Great Depression hit, and 2 years later, in 1931, there was a drought in the Great Plains area. And this drought created the dust storms that we read about in many history books today. By 1934, 35 million acres of cropland was totally destroyed and topsoil was completely lost. And another 125 million, about 3/4 the size of Texas, the topsoil was rapidly being lost. So in 1933, President Roosevelt created the Civilian Conservation Corps, or the CCC. And the CCC was part of the New Deal legislation, and the CCC was to help combat high unemployment, work on environmental conservation efforts. And many of those conservation efforts can still be seen today throughout the Great Plains area. And during this period also, there's an effort between colleges and universities to increase their agriculture departments and research in order to be able to reduce the effects of these climate changes and weather patterns. Another thing that happened was that the Erosion Conservation Service was created, and that evolved to what it is today, the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. So now let's go into the center and talk about some of the grasses themselves. Hello, we are at the Prairie Habitat exhibit in the Outdoor Campus building in Rapid City. And we are here by the grass display in that exhibit. And what we have here on top are some common plants that are found throughout the grasslands of South Dakota. Over on this side, we have the sunflower plant, which is an annual plant. And then the rest of these are all perennial plants, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But the annual plant, we're going to talk about it first. An annual plant starts from a seed in the spring of the year, usually when there's water, and then it'll sprout a root and develop leaves and flowers on it. And then the flower will do some magic to create some more seeds. The plant will die off and distribute those seeds for next year's growth. As you notice, compared to the rest of the roots here, the root on a sunflower or on an annual plant is very, very small. And it doesn't need to be very big because it's only going to live for 1 year. And so it wants to put all of its energy into the upper part. So the annual plant, again, only grows for 1 year. Some of the other annual plants that we deal with as far as on the grassland are some of the farming crops, which are wheat, oat, barley, corn, and rice. And so they have a very shallow root system, but we are very dependent on them for our diet. And for the animals, a lot of the animals we eat, they're dependent on some of those, but they're also some of the grazers that we have, like cattle, are very dependent on the grasslands that we have over here. So now let's talk a little bit about the perennial grasses from here on over. The turf grass is basically the grass that you see in people's front yard or in golf courses that they need to water continually. And again, if you notice, very shallow root system compared to other grasses. And these here are native grasses that you'll find in the grassland, and they have very extensive roots. And a lot of them are fibrous, but some plants, like this dotted gay feather crew over on this side, has a taproot that goes down to around 20 feet, as shown here on this display. And these are adaptations for it to be able to reach deeper water and be able to survive year after year and maintain its growth and its health. And if you graze these grasses properly, they will maintain their growth and health, and the root system will maintain itself. So now let's move down to the topsoil just a little bit. Topsoil can be, depending on the climate, the type of soil, and the minerals underneath that the soils are developing on, is how deep that topsoil is. But the topsoil is basically dead plant and animal material that develops right underneath and slowly, right underneath the plant base, and slowly works its way deeper and deeper. This is organic matter which helps the plant grow. It's slowly being broken down for nutrients. It helps increase the water intake and the water usage for the plants that are out there. It provides nutrients for the plant, and it holds the plant in place, stabilizes the plant, and keeps it healthy, strong. So as long as you have proper grazing up on top here, and you don't overutilize that grass and you use it in a way that it can continually grow, these roots will maintain a healthy environment. Overgrazing or continually grazing, you're taking nutrients away from these roots. They become shallower and weaker, and it's harder to keep those plants alive. So that's why it's important to understand that underneath the ground is a lot of growing of the plant that you don't see on a daily basis. Okay, we're now going to talk about the conservation practices that will increase and protect that topsoil and reversing some of the past farming and ranching practices that we had. So for farmland and also rangeland, soil health is a very important and basically the terminology that is being used today. So with soil health, you have reduced tillage, using tillage implements a lot less, working with crop rotation, a cover crop, and reducing dependence on chemicals and moisture management. Those will all help with the increase in organic matter at the top, creating a better environment for plant growth to continue and to maintain that healthy environment to grow. Also, grazing. Grazing, it used to be that farmers and ranchers would have a big area. They'd take all their cows and put it in that area at the beginning of the season. They would check on them throughout the season, but really wouldn't do much more with them and then move them off at the end. This created a pattern that the cows would utilize that didn't mimic what the bison did. So now what people are doing is they're looking at different ways to graze, and one of the bigger ones is what they call a short-term, high-density grazing system. In other words, the fields are a lot smaller. Ranchers will put their cows into a small field for a very short period of time, and then move them on to the next one and move them and continue to move them around to different fields where it'd be a long time before they came back to the first field, possibly in the same season, maybe even next year before they even come back to it. So this here mimics what the buffalo used to do and how they used to graze over time. So all of this is helping them, helping the soil increase that organic matter underneath, helping it capture more moisture, and the soil is actually a very dynamic living structure. And there's a lot of little plants, little animals that are continually working in that soil, breaking down nutrients, converting some nutrients to other molecules, and allowing that to be more on a natural flow of nature instead of man trying to force his way into what it's doing. So these are some of the conservation practices, but there's many more that people are working with throughout the year and learning all the time. These practices that I just talked about and more are being implemented across the Great Plains. Through this implementation, the ecosystem is becoming healthier, and the grasslands are capturing carbon from the air and creating a better future for all.